Have you ever heard persistent knocking at your door in the middle of the night, only to find nothing but a chilling darkness waiting in the hallway when you open it? Have you ever seen a shadow pass swiftly across your bathroom mirror, even though you were the only one awake on the entire floor? If not, don't be too relieved, because strange things only happen when you accidentally step into a place that's long been forgotten. The story I'm about to tell you today isn't a fabricated legend. It's what I and my roommates went through with our very lives. It all began the day we moved into Dormitory No. 7, an old, moss-covered building with long, narrow hallways and tightly shut doors that hadn't been opened for years. None of us knew that from the very moment we stepped foot in that place. Our fates had already been tied to a mystery we could never escape. A mystery, paid for with fear, haunting dreams, and death. Are you ready to walk through that door with me? As the almond leaves turned yellow and began to fall, signaling the arrival of autumn, we were preparing for a new journey, the beginning of our university years. I, along with my three closest friends, Min, Khan, and Dewey, were assigned to the same room in an old dormitory located at the far end of campus. Dormitory No. 7, a simple name, yet behind it hid countless strange events we never could have imagined. The very first day we entered the building, I could sense that something about the atmosphere was different. The hallways stretched endlessly, dimly lit, the walls stained with the yellow traces of time. Somewhere in the distance, the dragging sound of slippers echoed in the empty space, sending a shiver down my spine. Strangely, though it was a sunny day outside, stepping in made me feel an eerie chill crawling all over my skin. Our room was on the third floor, at the end of the hallway. The door was old, its hinges rusted, creaking mournfully every time we opened it. Inside, the room was just big enough for four, with 4 bunk beds faded by the years. The air carried a faint moldy scent, as if the room had been abandoned for a long time. That first evening, we cleaned up together, wiped everything down, and sat around eating instant noodles, chatting and laughing about the upcoming college life. All 4 of us were excited. No one gave much thought to the strange feelings we had sensed during the day. But that very first night, things began. Around midnight, when everyone had drifted off to sleep, I suddenly heard a light knocking sound at the door. At first, I thought someone had come to the wrong room. I buried my face in the blanket, trying to ignore it, but the knocking continued, steady, rhythmic, not too loud, not too soft, as if someone was patiently waiting. A minute passed, then 2, then 5. The knocking didn't stop. It grew closer, closer, not just outside the door anymore. It felt like it was creeping into my mind. I sat up straight, eyes squinting in the darkness, trying to listen. The room was pitch black, with only the faint light from the hallway slipping through the crack under the door. I reached over and nudged Khan on the bunk beside mine, whispering if he heard anything. He just mumbled in his sleep and didn't respond. Then it came again, the knocking, this time faster, more urgent, like someone was losing patience. I took a deep breath and decided to get out of bed. The moment my feet touched the floor, I felt the icy tiles, so cold they numbed my toes. I walked slowly toward the door and pressed my ear against it. Silence. A strange, unnerving silence. I grabbed the handle and slowly turned it with trembling hands. The door creaked open, and all I saw was a dark, empty hallway. No one, no sound, only the faint wind howling through the broken window at the end of the corridor. I shook my head, convincing myself it was just exhaustion playing tricks on me. I closed the door, locked it tightly, and climbed back into bed. But just as I pulled the blanket over me, I heard it, bare feet slapping softly against the floor. Each step clear, light, but very real. I cracked my eyes open and looked down at the space between the beds, where no one should be. A dark shadow slid across, barely visible in the dim light. I held my breath, frozen, My heart pounded so loudly I thought it would burst out of my chest. The next morning, I told Min, Khan, and Dewey everything. Min burst out laughing, thinking I was just haunted by all those college ghost stories we'd heard. Khan was half skeptical, half believing, but Dewey, his face turned pale. He said that during the night, he too had heard someone rummaging around the room, but he was too scared to open his eyes. We decided to brush it off, convincing ourselves it was just because we hadn't adjusted to the new place yet. But from that day on, strange things began to happen, again and again. Clothes we hung out on the balcony would sometimes fall off on their own. Even when there was no wind, the bathroom mirror would often fog up with bizarre, hand-shaped water stains. The room lights would flicker randomly, despite having just been replaced. But the most terrifying thing was that every night, at exactly 3 a.m., the knocking on our door returned, like some ritual. No matter how hard we tried to stay awake, no matter if we kept the lights on all night, the knocking still came, steady, cold, echoing through the stillness, as if mocking our helplessness. On the 7th night since we moved in, Min and I decided to set up a phone camera aimed directly at the door, hoping to record whatever happened at 3 a.m. What we captured, we would never forget. The video clearly showed the door slightly trembling, like someone on the other side was gently pushing it. But the most horrifying part, at the moment when the camera's night light flashed, the hallway outside revealed a faint, white silhouette, floating, blurry, with no visible face, standing right next to our door. It had its back turned to the camera, seemingly whispering something, shaking with fear. Min deleted the video immediately. He didn't dare keep it. That night, the four of us clung to each other, none of us able to sleep. We began to realize these strange occurrences weren't just tricks or imagination. There was something, or rather, someone, always present in this room, watching our every move, every breath, and that was only the beginning of the terrifying days we would face in dormitory number 7. After the night we saw that blurry figure outside our door on the phone screen, no one dared to bring it up again. As a group, we agreed to delete all footage and pretend it never happened. But trauma isn't something that can be erased that easily. From that day on, every night at 3 a.m., the knocking continued. But strangely, we stopped hearing it from outside the door. Instead, it felt like the sound echoed inside our heads, like a ghostly heartbeat that couldn't be silenced. Even with ears covered, sometimes, I could faintly feel that someone, on the other side of that door, was waiting. Waiting so long, they had fallen into desperation. One Sunday afternoon, the sky suddenly poured rain. Wind howled through the cracks of the old windows. Min was lying on his bed reading. Khan was scrolling through his phone. I was sorting through my messy study notes. Dewey had just gone out to buy food. Suddenly, Khan sat up, eyes wide in panic as he looked toward the window. "There's someone." His voice trembled. Startled, I followed Khan's gaze. Through the thick rain, on the fogged-up glass, a handprint appeared. Clearly a human handprint, faint, cold, pressed firmly from the outside. But that was impossible. Our room was on the 3rd floor. And outside that window was just open air. No balcony, no ledge, no place for anyone to stand. Min threw his book aside and rushed to shut the curtains. The three of us huddled together, silent. The rain tapping on the metal roof and the wind whistling through the cracks became a haunting soundtrack to what was unfolding. When Dewey returned, drenched to the bone, we hurried to tell him everything. But Dewey just frowned and said it had been raining heavily, and he hadn't seen anyone outside the window. That night, after everything quieted down, I lay awake, tossing and turning. The clock's ticking echoed in the dark. 3 a.m. came again. I knew it, not by the clock, but by the pounding of my heart. And once again, the knocking returned. But this time, it wasn't hesitant like before. It was loud, fast, like someone was furiously banging on the door, desperate, angry. Min jumped up and shouted, "Who's there?" There was no reply. At the moment I turned my head toward the window. I swear I saw a pale white face pressed against the glass. A face with no eyes. No nose, just hollow. Black pits, as if some invisible hand had erased every feature. I jumped up and rushed to yank the curtain shut, while Khan trembled, muttering what sounded like a prayer. Dai's face had gone ghostly pale, eyes wide, staring fixedly at the door. We huddled together in one corner of the room, none of us daring to move. Time felt frozen. The knocking continued, and then, suddenly stopped. Silence fell, total, unnatural silence. Right then, from the crack in the window, a foul stench rose, so pungent it made me gag. It was the smell of blood. I summoned all my courage and slowly peeked through the curtain. It was still raining, but strangely, the ground beneath the window, where there should have been only rainwater, was now streaked with dark red stains. Like blood seeping down from somewhere, mixing with the flowing water. I yanked the curtain shut again, gasping for breath. No way that's real. That night, we sat together all the way until morning. None of us sleeping a wink. Only the sound of rain tapping rhythmically against the roof remained, like hammers pounding against our frayed nerves. The next morning, as weak sunlight slipped through the crack in the door, we finally staggered to our feet. All four of us looked pale and drained. Min quietly suggested, "We need to find out what's really going on in this dormitory." And just like that, we began our journey into the dark past of the old building. A journey that none of us knew. Every step deeper into the shadows was a step closer to a horrifying truth. Ever since that rainy night, Dormitory No. 7 felt completely different. It wasn't just about the knocking or the figure in the window anymore. Every corner, every hallway, every breath we took carried a heavy, eerie chill. We lived in a state of half-consciousness, no longer excited about our college life like we were at the beginning. 3 a.m. had become a curse. But that night, everything escalated to a new level. I woke up suddenly, freezing cold, like something had crept into every pore of my skin. In a hazy dream, I found myself standing in the middle of an endless hallway. Flickering yellow lights revealed cracked tiles and stained walls. Far ahead, someone stood with their back to me. A girl in white, with long hair covering her face. I didn't know why, but my legs moved on their own, guided by some invisible force. I walked toward her. Each step echoed loudly through the silence, blending with the icy wind that whistled through the corridor. She didn't move, still, unmoving, as if waiting. When I was only a few steps away, she turned around. Her face was ghostly white. Her eyes were empty voids. Her mouth twisted into a terrifying, crooked smile. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. My whole body went numb. She floated toward me, each step gliding inches above the ground. Like a misty phantom, I tried to back away, but her ice-cold hand touched my neck. The chill pierced straight into my heart. In that moment, I saw my own reflection in her soulless eyes, trembling, terrified. And then, darkness. I jolted awake, drenched in sweat, heart pounding out of control. The room was dark, with only a faint light slipping through the crack in the door. I sat up, trying to calm down, but something worse than the dream was waiting for me. Right beneath my bed, on the old tiled floor, were wet footprints, small ones, leading from the door all the way to my bed. Not just one, but a whole trail. As if someone had silently entered while we were all fast asleep. I shook Min, Khan, and Dewey awake. All three stared at the footprints in shock, speechless. Even Dewey, the one who was usually the bravest, was now pale. He stammered that he'd dreamed of a girl in white, too, but in his dream, she was standing outside our window, pressing her hand against the glass, her eyes full of endless sorrow. Khan and Min hadn't fared any better. Both had dreams eerily similar, of a girl in white, of a deep sadness. as if someone was silently pleading for help. That terrifying coincidence was impossible to ignore. The next day, we decided to dig into the history of Dormitory No. 7. After asking around, we finally found an older janitor willing to talk. She told us that nearly 20 years ago, a female student mysteriously disappeared in this very dorm. All they found was her white shirt, soaked in blood. Her body was never recovered. Since then, strange things kept happening. Students moved out without a word. Some fell into depression so severe they had to drop out. People said her spirit never left. That she had unfinished business, something she couldn't let go of. Hearing that, a cold chill ran down my spine. The girl in the dream, it must have been her. But what had happened to her? Who had taken her life? We knew that if we didn't uncover the truth, we would never escape this nightmare. And so, as if answering some unspoken promise, that night, we made a decision. We would stay in the hallway on the 3rd floor at exactly 3 a.m. to face the ghost. A decision that, even now when we look back, still makes us shudder in fear. 3 a.m. The 3rd floor hallway of the dormitory was cloaked in a strange, thin mist, as if the entire space had been swallowed by an invisible, icy breath. The dim yellow lights flickered continuously, each pulse of light as broken and uneven as the final breaths of something slowly dying. We, Min, Khan, Dewey, and I, stood huddled together near the wall by our room, each of us gripping a small flashlight. The beams trembled, barely piercing through the fog. No one said a word. We just listened. The wind howled through the window cracks. The sound of footsteps, soft, slow, echoed from the far end of the hallway. It couldn't have been a living person. We knew that. Each step didn't fall solidly but floated, glided, dragging a cold, unnatural sound through the air. I swallowed hard, clutching my flashlight so tightly my knuckles turned white. The footsteps stopped, right in front of room number 7. That room, ever since we moved in, no one had ever used it. The door was always tightly locked, the rusty padlock looking like it hadn't been touched in years. I glanced at Min. He nodded, signaling us to approach. We crept forward, every step feeling like we were pressing into frost. The door to room 7 was slightly ajar, a thin gap, just enough to peek inside. In the weak light, I saw an empty room. The walls were covered in bizarre, moldy stains. Scattered across the floor were yellowed, crumpled sheets of old paper, as if forgotten by time. We stood there for a few minutes. No one dared enter. Suddenly, the door creaked open wider, as if inviting us in. A gust of cold air surged out, carrying with it the musty smell of dampness, mixed with a familiar metallic stench. I took a deep breath, told myself not to run, and stepped onto the icy tiles inside. And at that exact moment, the hallway lights went out. The entire floor was swallowed in thick, suffocating darkness. A sharp gasp came from behind. I turned around, but Min, Khan, and Dewey were frozen, staring at something in the center of the room. There, a white figure slowly began to appear. A girl, her long hair draped over her face, her white dress stained with dark red smears, her bare feet gliding over the floor. She didn't come toward us. She just stood there and pointed to the wall at the end of the room. I trembled, slowly aiming my flashlight in that direction. The beam swept over the peeling plaster and stopped on a jagged message, scrawled in what looked like old, dried blood. I haven't been set free. Below that message, a streak of blood stretched all the way to the corner of the wall. Khan began trembling, backing away as he stammered, Look." Following his pointing finger, we saw a torn piece of fabric wedged deep inside a crack in the wall. Min rushed forward and tugged it out. It was an old white cloth, stiff and stained with dried blood. Wrapped inside it was a small, time-worn piece of paper. We unfolded it under the flickering flashlight and read, "If someone finds this, please uncover the truth. I didn't kill myself. I didn't want to die. They murdered me. My hands shook violently. Cold sweat dripped down my forehead. There was no doubt anymore. This girl, this spirit, wasn't just haunting the place out of vengeance. She was begging for help. Room number 7 had witnessed a horrifying crime. And the killer, until now, had never been revealed. Suddenly, the wind howled louder. The windows banged wildly against the walls. And the girl's figure faded slowly into the mist. We stood frozen in the freezing room, our hearts drowning in a fear too deep to name. But deep inside, a fire lit. We had to uncover the truth, even if it cost us our lives. After that night, after stepping into room 7 and discovering the desperate note, something heavy hung over all of us. No one dared speak about the pale figure that had glided through the room, or the bloodied words still burned into our restless dreams. But as if it were fate we couldn't escape. The strange events didn't slow down, they intensified. At midnight, the room door would open on its own, even though the lock remained untouched. At exactly 3 a.m., the lights would shut off completely. No matter how many times we changed the bulbs, the dreams of the girl in white became more vivid, so vivid. I couldn't tell anymore what was real and what was imagined. And then came the peak. A night so terrifying that even now, we can't speak of it without a visible shiver. Around 1 a.m., Dewey suddenly sat up from sleep, grimacing. "My stomach hurts," he muttered. "I'm going to the restroom." The restroom was at the end of the hallway, about 20 meters from our room. It was an old shared bathroom, with cracked tiles and a permanent moldy smell. Dewey threw on a jacket, grabbed his flashlight, and trudged out. The door closed behind him, and the room once again fell into an eerie silence. 5 minutes, 10, 15. Dewey still hadn't come back. At first, we thought maybe he was just having a rough time and needed longer. But when the clock neared 2 a.m. and still no sign of him, a creeping unease began to rise inside me. Min threw off his blanket and sat up, muttering, "Why's he taking so long? I'll go look for him." Khan and I scrambled up as well, deciding to go together. The moment we stepped into the hallway, a gust of cold wind swept through, raising goosebumps all over my skin. The hallway stretched endlessly into darkness, lit only by the weak beams of our flashlights as we carefully felt our way forward. When we neared the restroom, we froze. The restroom door was ajar, the old wooden panel creaking back and forth with the wind, groaning like a mourning soul. Inside, it was pitch black, no sound of running water, no indication anyone was there. I called out loudly, "Dewey, are you in there?" No response. Min glanced at me, then summoned all his courage and pushed the door wide open. A blast of cold air hit us square in the face. The stench was so strong, so pungent and metallic, I nearly threw up. Our flashlights swept across the restroom. Half-closed stall doors, stagnant water puddles scattered across the floor. And then, a flashlight lying in the middle of the path, flickering dimly. It was Di's. My heart dropped. Without thinking, Min and I rushed in to check each stall. The first one, empty. The second, empty. The third, I pushed the door open and nearly dropped my flashlight. On the moss-covered wall, someone, or something, had used a dark brown substance to sketch a crude human figure. A figure in a white dress, head hanging low, arms dangling limply. Beneath the drawing, in strange jagged handwriting, were smudged words, "One of us is gone." I trembled uncontrollably, stumbling back and shouting, "Dewey, Dewey," but only empty echoes answered. No trace, no sound. Dewey had vanished, as if he had never existed. We panicked. We ran up and down the dorm building, searching every floor, every corner. We called his phone over and over, but all we heard were endless rings. His phone was still in our room. That night, the three of us searched every inch of the dormitory, but Dewey was gone. No one saw him leave the building. No one in the dorm heard any strange sounds. It was as if an invisible hand had pulled him into another world. The next morning, we reported it to the dorm management and the school. The official search began. Police were called in. They combed through every room, every floor, but it was useless. Dewey, our close friend, had disappeared without a trace, right inside that old dormitory. And deep in my heart, I knew this was no coincidence. Because that night, when we returned to our room, on Di's pillow, there was a small, wet handprint, cold and clear, pointing directly toward room number 7. The air in our room grew so heavy it was hard to breathe. Di's disappearance left us all in a state of extreme panic. In the days that followed, even though the school kept searching, and the police did everything they could, not a single clue surfaced. It was as if Dewey had evaporated from the world. We took turns staying awake at night, but as soon as the darkness fell, the knocking returned, relentless, cruel, like a ritual. None of us dared open the door anymore. And so, night after sleepless night, drowning in fear, the girl in white appeared once again in my dreams. But this time, she didn't just stand there like before. In the dream, I saw her curled up under an old tree by the dorm's side wall. Her arms wrapped around her knees, long hair covering her face. Dark blood stains spread across the ground beneath her. As I stepped closer, she lifted her head. Her face was still blurred and pale, but in those hollow eyes, I saw unbearable pain and desperate pleading. She whispered, in a hoarse voice that sounded like it rose from the cold earth. "They killed me. They sealed me here. Save me." I jolted awake, drenched in sweat, my shirt soaked through. Staggering upright, my eyes landed on the desk beside my bed, where an unfamiliar object now sat. It was an old comb, made of deep black ebony, still tangled with damp strands of long hair. A faint scent lingered, the smell of withered wildflowers. That comb couldn't have belonged to any of us. I woke Min and Khan. Both instantly noticed how strange it was. The desk had always been empty. None of us owned anything like it. We decided to take the comb to the old janitor, the only person who had ever told us about the dorm's dark past. The moment she saw the comb, her expression changed. Her hands trembled, her voice cracked. This comb belonged to Fuang. We were stunned. She explained that Fuang was the girl who had gone missing 20 years ago. Before she vanished, Fuang always carried that ebony comb with her. It was a gift from her mother before she died, said to be a protective charm. But after the night Fuang disappeared, no one ever found the comb again. Until now. The janitor lowered her head and sighed, then continued her story. Back then, Fuang was known as a kind, hard-working student, but because of her beauty, she caught the attention of a group of male students at school. One night, when the entire dorm lost power, people heard frantic screams coming from the 3rd floor, where Fuang lived. The next morning, all they found was her blood-soaked white shirt in the restroom. Fuang had vanished forever. Rumors said the ones responsible covered it up, silencing everyone involved, and sealed Fuang's spirit through a strange ritual, trapping her inside the dorm itself to hide their crime. I shuddered. Fuang had been betrayed, assaulted, and imprisoned within the very place she once called home. Worse yet, the curse they created had triggered countless horrifying events, unexplained disappearances, strange cases of depression, and students who fled in the dead of night, never to return. And now, Dewey had likely become part of that same tragedy. The more I listened, the tighter my chest felt. We realized that, somehow, by touching the comb, we had awakened Fuang's restless spirit. And maybe, she was now trying to use us to seek justice. That night, when we returned to our room, we made a decision. We would find the truth. We would set Fuang free. And, if we had to, we would face the dark force that had held her captive all these years. Because once we'd stepped into this spiral, there was no turning back. The old comb felt like a sign of fate, pulling us deeper into the terrifying mystery of Dormitory No. 7. We couldn't just stand by anymore. We decided to do something we'd never even dared to think about before: investigate the places tied to Phuong's disappearance. The first place that came to mind was the back courtyard of the dorm, the place where, in my dream, Phuong had sat curled beneath an ancient tree, crying. That night, once the dorm had fallen into complete darkness, Min, Khan, and I bundled up in thick jackets, grabbed our old flashlights and a shovel borrowed from the night guard, and quietly slipped out to the back. The yard was utterly silent. Only the faint buzz of insects filled the thick night air. Our flashlights flickered over the gnarled old tree, its bark scarred like wounds sunk deep into the earth. We began digging beneath the tree, each shovelful of cold soil feeling like a piece of a dark memory buried for the last 20 years. After about 10 minutes, Min's shovel struck something hard. A sharp metallic clang rang out in the night, startling us so badly we dropped our flashlights. Trembling, I knelt down and brushed away the damp soil. A small object emerged from the frozen ground. It was a rusty iron box. The lid was sealed with frayed red threads, rotten with age. With shaking hands, Khan pried open the lid. A pungent stench hit us instantly, making all three of us nearly gag. Inside the box, what we saw under the dim light left us speechless. A faded old photograph, yellowed with time, showing 4 people, 3 male students and a young girl. The girl in the photo was Phuong. Her eyes in the picture were filled with sadness and confusion. Even more disturbing, someone had scratched out the faces of the 3 boys with something sharp, tearing them into jagged, grotesque scars. Beneath the photo was a handwritten letter, the ink smeared and faded. They promised to let me go if I stayed silent. But I know, silence will never save my soul. If someone finds these things, please fight for my justice. A chill swept over me. Min flipped the photo over. On the back, in trembling handwriting, Phuong had written 3 names. We didn't recognize the names. But the next morning, we searched through the school's archived records and were stunned. Those 3 names all belonged to senior students from the year Phuong disappeared. And the most horrifying part, one of them was now the school's vice principal. We were frozen by the truth. A storm of anger and terror rose inside me. This wasn't just a murder. It was a dark conspiracy, buried for decades, hidden by power, lies, blood, and tears. That evening, back in our room, while I was carefully placing the iron box on the table, something strange happened. The photo suddenly flew from my hands, landing face down on the floor. A gust of wind, where there was none, flipped it over. And a new line of writing had appeared, as if drawn in fresh blood. Don't trust anyone, they're coming. Min, Khan, and I stared at each other, our eyes wide in panic. Just then, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. Slow, deliberate, dragging across the icy floor. Once again, it was 3 a.m. And this time, it wasn't just knocking. A whisper, soft but clear, called from outside. Let me in. 3 a.m. The gentle knocks turned into pounding, wild, furious, each strike like it was trying to rip the old wooden door off its hinges. Like it wanted to drag us out, to face the unseen horror waiting in the dark. Outside, the whisper repeated, over and over. Let me in. We crouched in the corner of the room, holding our breath. Our flashlights had died. The only light was the eerie red moonlight spilling in through the cracked window. A blood moon. The sky outside was stained deep red, like diluted blood washing over everything. Since we moved in, we had never seen anything like it. Then, the footsteps stopped. Silence returned, thick, suffocating silence. I looked at Min and Khan. Both nodded, ready. We couldn't hide like cowards forever. I gathered every ounce of courage I had and slowly crept toward the door, pressing my ear against it. Outside, complete silence. No wind, no footsteps. Only one thing slipped through the crack beneath the door. An icy breath laced with a sickening, metallic stench. I took a deep breath and gently turned the doorknob. The door creaked open. The hallway stretched out in front of me, bathed in the eerie red glow of the blood moon. Shadows clung tightly to both sides, deep and endless, like gaping mouths waiting to swallow anyone who strayed too far. And then, within that flickering, ghostly light, I saw them. From both ends of the hallway, shadowy figures began to appear. One by one, their entire bodies were draped in white, their hair soaked and clinging to their faces, floating just inches above the ground. They weren't walking, they were gliding. No sound, no breath, just their presence, cold, heavy, thick, squeezing the air around us, making me feel like I was drowning in an endless nightmare. Spirits, not just Fuang. There were more, so many more. Other victims, students who had vanished, who had been consumed by this spiral of death. Now, they were nothing more than lingering souls, trapped, unable to move on. Min and Khan stood frozen behind me. Not a word from either of them. Suddenly, from among the spirits, one form drifted forward. Fuang. She floated toward us, her bare feet brushing silently across the frozen floor. Her long hair veiled her face, only her pale, lifeless hands showing. When she reached me, she stopped. Slowly, she raised her head. Her face was no longer twisted, no longer terrifying like before. This time, her eyes were filled with pain and a desperate plea. She lifted her hand and pointed toward room number 7. Again, I understood. Fuang wanted us to return, to uncover the final truth buried there. But just then, a hideous sound rang out from the far end of the hall, a chilling, broken laugh that didn't belong to anything human. All the spirits turned, and then, every single one of them began to scream. A gut-wrenching chorus of torment tore through the red-soaked night. A whirlwind rose, flinging papers, dry leaves, and debris across the hallway like shrapnel. We slammed the door shut and barricaded it with anything we could find. Outside, the screams didn't stop. Heavy footsteps pounded against the floor. Cold, pale hands reached under the door, scratching, clawing, searching. In the chaos, I heard Fuang's whisper in my mind. They've returned. If we're not fast, everyone will die. I shivered, realizing that this blood moon night was only the beginning of the true nightmare. And this time, it wouldn't just be Dewey. We had no way out either. After the blood moon night, everything changed. The dorm's atmosphere grew dense, like something invisible was crushing the air from our lungs. The spirits had fully manifested, no longer flickers, no longer illusions. We knew the curse was reaching its end. And to break it, someone would have to stay behind. Fuang stopped appearing in our dreams. But in her place, signs began showing in the waking world. The mirror in our room cracked clean in two without anyone touching it. The lights flickered violently every night at 3 a.m. And Fuang's photo, once kept inside the rusted box, now showed burn marks spreading slowly around its edges. Min, Khan, and I decided to return to room number 7, one last time. This time, we brought everything: the ebony comb, Fuang's letter, the photograph, and the rusted box. We believed these were the keys to freeing her tormented soul. Room number 7 was colder than ever. Our flashlights flickered across dried bloodstains, handprints on the walls, and that now familiar scent drifted through the air, wet hair and tears. Suddenly, all our flashlights went out at once. The room plunged into total darkness, and in that pitch black, Fuang appeared again, no longer bloody, no longer twisted. She hovered before us, wearing her white ao dai, her face serene, but her eyes still unbearably sad. She said nothing. She just looked at us for a long time. Then, Fuang raised her hand and pointed directly at Khan. Khan's face turned ghostly pale. He took a step back, stammering, "No, it wasn't me. I didn't do anything." But Fuang didn't look away. She kept pointing. Min and I exchanged confused glances. Why Khan? Then, suddenly, Khan dropped to his knees, clutching his head, screaming. I touched her back when I found the bloody shirt. I was the first one who saw it in the restroom that day, but I stayed silent. The air in the room froze. Fuang closed her eyes. A single tear rolled down her ghostly cheek. She floated toward Khan, gently placing her hand on his forehead. A brilliant white light erupted through the room. Wind howled like a storm. Objects were tossed in every direction. But Min and I remained frozen, locked in place by some invisible force. Khan looked up, eyes full of tears, and whispered, I'll take Dai's place. I'll repay what I owe. Let this end. His body began to glow, then dissolved into thousands of tiny shards of light, swirling around Fuang like a cyclone. Fuang embraced the light. She smiled, for the first and last time. Then the two of them merged and vanished. The room returned to stillness. Our flashlights flickered back on. Everything was quiet, as if no one had ever been there. We ran, searching for Khan, everywhere. But he was gone, no trace left behind. Only one thing remained on the cold tiled floor, a broken ebony comb. And in the corner of the room, a crimson message on the wall. Thank you, Khan has chosen. I am free. After that night, after Khan vanished into the light and the final message appeared, every strange occurrence in the dormitory disappeared completely. No more knocks at 3 a.m. No more cold winds whispering through the halls. No more blood. No more screams. No more ghostly figures behind the glass. Room number 7, after nearly 20 years sealed shut, was suddenly unlocked by the dorm manager, who had no idea what had happened. She said, Strange. I remember this room being locked for years. But this morning, I came to check, and the door was wide open. Min and I just stayed quiet. We didn't say a word. We kept everything to ourselves. No one would believe us. And no one needed to know. Every trace of Khan gradually vanished. No records. No one remembered he had ever lived here. His name disappeared from the class list. Only Min and I remembered. In the nights that followed, the two of us would sit silently on the dorm balcony, watching the moon rise. The moon was no longer blood red. It was soft and gentle. But in my eyes, I still saw Khan smiling, quietly walking away. A week later, we moved out of dormitory number 7. Before leaving, I returned to room number 7 and stood there for a long time. In the corner of the room, where the blood message had once appeared, everything was clean and white now. But as the last light of day slanted across the wall, I could faintly make out a tiny line of text, so small. It felt like a whisper. I don't regret it. Thank you for believing. It was Khan. I smiled and nodded softly. At the gate of the dormitory, I turned to look back one final time. The wind brushed gently through my hair, carrying a chill that felt strangely comforting. In the window on the 3rd floor, I saw a faint figure standing there. It wasn't Fuang. It wasn't Khan. Just a nameless silhouette. Still, unmoving, faceless. Maybe it was someone new, just moved in. Or maybe, the dormitory had never truly found peace. Either way, the old curse had been lifted. But the secrets buried in the past, they weren't gone. Just asleep, waiting for someone new to step inside. Some curses aren't broken. They simply go quiet for a while. Some ghosts don't seek revenge. They only need someone to listen. And some doors, once opened, never close again. Candle, thank you for joining the 10-part journey of dormitory number 7. If you believe the story has ended, look again at the 3rd floor window, just once more. And if you dare, do you have the courage to enter? Room 304? New Moon, see you in part 2, where the nightmare is just beginning again.